Isabelle, how are you?
I am so good as well. I am extremely excited about this episode because you actually helped me start somewhere 2 years ago.
I know it's so cool to, be here in your journey in this time because, yeah, I remember right at the start, I remember chatting about the title and the artwork and everything like that. So this is really cool.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting like such amazing, exciting flashbacks. It's so cool for like a full circle 2 years later. And yeah, I'm so honored to host you on the podcast today.
So good.
Amazing. So I guess firstly, how are you feeling? How's everything been? How's it looks like, from what you share online and whatnot, we will go so much deeper behind what you post online and everything. But how are you today? How is everything?
Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, look, she's busy, just like usual. Probably exact same as when we spoke, a couple of years ago. Um, but yeah, just very busy with all my passion projects. I've obviously got a new baby, so I used to have well, I still have two business babies, and now I have an actual baby. She's 10 months old. Her name is Ivy Girl, and she's the best. It's been such a big transformational year for me with having a baby and running my businesses. But I wouldn't change it for the world.
I love that. And I'm really going to dive so much deeper into everything you just shared there. But I would love to start by really firstly exploring. Georgie, I feel like you are essentially that girl. You've got the business, as you just shared, multiple businesses, the baby, the social media platform, the podcast, YouTube, the house, the collabs with the Lion brand. The list goes on. How do you do it?
Uh, this is such a great question. And the very truthful, transparent answer is not without, so much help and a village full of people who have my back and support me. You know me, Isabel, like I'm very for I'm the first one to say I have a whole team behind, both my brands. My husband stays at home with Ivy so I can, go to work. We have a cleaner. We have help with her. And I think it's like, I think the biggest thing for me realizing in this journey is it's so much richer going forward when you are with people who believe in your, brand, who believe in your messaging. And yeah, so I don't do it all. That's the short answer. Obviously this year has actually been a big pivotal point for me in regards to being more stricter with my boundaries, having to be very organized because I no longer can just whip my laptop out at home when I'm with Ivy. I'm very strict with the mum boundaries. So yeah, I've had to be a bit more conservative with my time and working ahead and that sort of thing. But yeah, I definitely don't do it all.
Yeah, I really respect how transparent you can be because so often we think people have all the flashy stuff and like it's just them. So I think it's really refreshing to hear that there is essentially a whole village helping you. And as well as, I've followed, not only have I worked with you, but I've followed you for quite some time as well. And I remember when you stepped away from your corporate job and really stepped out into this whole, personal brand, social media influencer type position, I'm going to call it. And you hired Mel. And I'm really curious to know, like, what was that transition like? And I guess making sense that it was quote unquote like the right time to hire somebody like Mel to really elevate your brand. Like, what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's funny because I remember with the Mel, I kind of like the pivotal point was, before I quit my corporate job, I was doing all my social media stuff on the side as well as my corporate job. And in my corporate job, I started work at 7:30, and I often wouldn't get home till 6:37, if we were had stuff on. And so I would get up at, 4:30. I would go to gym. I would get my content in the morning. At lunchtime, I would be editing my YouTube videos. And then when I got home, I would then, edit my content and do all that sort of stuff. And it's
Mm.
funny because I made this huge decision to quit my corporate job and step into my side hustle. And the first 2 or 3 months, I realized I wasn't actually getting much more ahead when I had the whole day. So, I had these like 9 hours extra per day, and it felt like
Yeah.
I wasn't kind of getting ahead. And it's when
Mm.
I realized that, with one of you, there's only so much you can do. And I was realizing there was a lot of tasks that weren't necessarily like my zone of genius. So they were taking me a lot longer. And then I guess I made this decision because I definitely financially wasn't ready to hire someone at that point. But it was kind of like I'd made such a huge step in quitting my corporate job and taking this risk. I was like, we're either
Mm.
doing it or we're not. And I
Mm.
knew that I needed help along the way. Um, and I think sometimes we can kind of get in our own way and be like, oh, well, I can't afford them and I can just do that job. But what you don't realize is when you, have more time to, I call it like the visionary role of seeing more of a vision for where you want things to go rather than being stuck in the day-to-day tasks. You will find that you will get there tenfold faster because you're so clear. And so that was just a huge realization. And that,
Mm.
yeah, was, I guess, like how I made my first hire.
Yeah, I feel like so many of my listeners and myself especially, I really resonate with that. A lot of what I do share in the podcast is, start somewhere. It was a side hustle for me, and now I am really in that transition of turning it into something more. So for people who are listening and maybe they want to start to explore a passion project, or they have a side hustle, or they have an idea for a side hustle, what are some tips from yourself to really help them start?
Um, I think the biggest tip is just like make sure you are so passionate about it because, this is something that you're going to have to when it's a side hustle, you're doing it on top of all the other things.
Yeah.
And there's going to be times where it's literally the last thing you want to do. So having that key thing where you're so, I guess, also being so clear about why it's a passion for you and your why will then get you through those grueling times where you really do have to put in that, the hard yards and that foundation to get it from a side hustle, to your main thing if that's what you want. But such a huge thing is like knowing your why, being very clear about what that looks like. And making sure it has such, a key thing in your heart because, yeah, there's going to be some, tough times that you've got to get through for sure. And then I guess also what I was saying before, I was, like, if you do really want to make that step, it's being very resourceful with your time because I guarantee you, if you have a side hustle, you probably don't have a lot of time because you'd have a lot of other things going on. So, being very intentional with your schedule, with the certain things you do, if there are some things that you can outsource, that, it might cost you a little bit of money, but that person can get it done very quickly and save you time or energy. Looking into those sorts of things too were really key at the start when I was starting everything.
Yeah, that sounds like very useful and like applicable information. I really like how you said being intentional with your schedule, and like what just came to my mind now is like, can you think back to any, specific morning routines, for example, or habits, or how you kind of like optimize your time to ensure you could sustain the side hustle while you were working your corporate?
It's not very glamorous, but just get up earlier.
I remember a 4:30 wake up.
Yeah, like it's just you need to know what like if it is truly a priority, you will
Yeah.
make the time. And I
Mm.
think, I look back to those days and what my day would look like and how I did it. And now I'm like, oh God, like I could
Yeah.
and that I think that's the key here is it's not going to be a sustainable routine. It's not
Yeah.
something you're going to do for the rest of your life, but it's looking at, hey, this is a key season in my life where I am putting in the foundation, where I am hustling, where I'm putting in the work. So it might be, getting up earlier, getting up before it's light, getting in that hour of working on your business before you start your 9 to 5. And I guess also a big thing is prioritizing it. Like I said, it's a season, realizing it a season. So maybe on the weekend, you can't go and, see your friends and have a night out because that will take, 5 hours of working on your business. And then the whole next day, if you are hungover or that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And like making decisions from that point where it's very intentional is so so key, but also have in your mind this is not forever, this is not sustainable, and that's okay, but I'm doing this for a purpose.
Yeah, I like that. It really is like having those small sacrifices. And I really like as well how you mentioned focusing on like the season. And like if somebody is, they're in their mind about starting a side hustle and they're looking at their life, how could somebody like really make clear on, okay, what should I sacrifice or what should I take up more of or less of in my life? Like for somebody who's never done that before, I think, I can think back to myself, the idea of sacrificing, socializing or this or that when you haven't done it before, it can feel quite like, icky and kind of scary to do. So like what could be some mind shifts to really help people get comfortable with, I guess, essentially like putting yourself first, like putting your side hustle first?
That's so true, Isabel. And I think it's sometime, especially if you're like, I feel like we can all be, people pleasers to a certain point where you feel guilty. And I think it's about changing that mindset and going, I'm not being selfish. I'm putting my priorities first. And also like a huge shift, like I said before, is like not saying this is going to be forever, just saying this is like a season I'm in. And when I used to frame it that way, like it made me really proud because it's
Yeah.
like, you know what, this is grueling and this is like pretty hectic, but also it's a season and I'm so proud of myself for actually committing to it. And also like I think it's like anything, once you do it enough times it becomes a habit. And so with the 4:30 a.m. wake ups, it's not like I just went from 7 a.m. to 4:30. I gradually got the time back and I gradually um, got up that little bit earlier because I realized, that extra half an hour I could spend editing was getting me
Yeah.
closer to my goal, etc., etc. So I think it's also about like habit stacking, and it's just like after you do it enough times, it forms a habit, and you're like, oh, it's normal to get up at this time of morning, um,
Yeah.
if that makes
I think,
sense.
yeah, no, that makes so much sense. I think that's like a really powerful piece for people to listen to. What are like as well, I love how you mentioned habit stacking. What is like your favorite form of habit stacking that really helps you go from that 7 to eventually 4:30 wake up or any other habit that's really served you?
Well, like the waking up early, the biggest advice is like just get to bed earlier.
Yeah.
I'm someone who I need 8 to 9 hours sleep. Probably eight. Nine's a bit dramatic. Um, but so it's like on your clock, it's I see that amount of hours. So I'd be like, well, if I'm getting up
Yeah.
this time, I've got to go to
Yeah.
sleep to that time, and just being very committed from the night before. A big thing I do is again the night before I set up everything. So when I wake up, I don't have to think. It's habit stacking. So I put my clothes out. I even put my pre-workout with a scoop in it all ready to go. I try and make it, simpler for my future self. And that's like you can do that in everything in life. You can do it in your business. Thinking of your future self rather than just like the here and the now. So also something else like this is a bit random, and I guess it's more it's very personal, but I was realizing for a moment there I was neglecting my journaling and meditation, which for me is such a key habit for my mindset. And so I realize it's because I would like do gym, and then I'd just be in so much of a rush, like I would forget about it. And I have a home gym, sorry. So something I've done recently is I took my tarot cards and my journal, and it's now in my gym. So as soon as I finish gym, I see my journal cards and I do my journaling, and then I go upstairs. So I'm not missing it. So if there's something key that you're, missing or neglecting, what can you attach it to what you already do in your current routines, so it to feel easier. So if journaling's a thing for you, maybe it's like putting your journal near where you have breakfast, or that sort of thing. So it's very simple. We've just got to be like committed enough and really think of our future self to actually implement it.
Yeah, and really like thinking outside the box as well. I remember I used to have a journal in my car, and I'm not sure if it's illegal to like write when you're at the traffic lights, but if I'm listening to a podcast and I get like an amazing download or something, I'm not going to pull out my phone. So I'll just like pull out my journal from like my glove box. And I mean, yeah, like it served me for a time back then. Um, so so random. But yeah, like you said, like you had your random example, I've got mine. Like I think the main takeaway I want everyone to hear is like just get creative and like look at your lifestyle and look like what works for you. Because it's just about, I love as well how you mentioned like your future self. I think that's such like a beautiful place to always take your mind. I really want to chat about money. And this is because I believe, especially as women, as females, it's like I don't know, almost this secretive topic. And it's like we sometimes shouldn't even speak about it. I know this is becoming, less and less more of, but I feel as well like with yourself, Georgie, you do speak a lot about this type of content, especially, in the Rise and Conquer project when I did it also, and all about more so the spiritual side to money. And that being said, though, I really want to ask the question, how did you get into all of this monetary success? So you've got the multiple businesses. So I guess on that note as well, having multiple streams of income, is that something that you believe is super important?
Um, yeah, well, like starting off just with the money mindset, why I'm, so passionate about it is because I used to have a really kind of funky money mindset where, like you said, especially as women, it was like, we don't really talk about it. It's like this taboo subject. And I had a lot of like, beliefs about money growing up, scarcity stories running in my head that really drove my relationship with money. And once I guess I started unpacking this and doing a lot of work around money, I realized it's like anything else you work on. So, if another issue that I worked on was, self acceptance of my body, where I had to go through like a full process of, deciding that I was good enough just as I am, and things, get to still happen for me because I look a certain way. So, a similar kind of thing with money, I had to look at my money stories. I had to look at, the negative loops that were playing in my head. And it's crazy because I guess you just never think to like change your money mindset. You just think, well, money's money. And there's a per hour rate, and there's like it just is. It's not necessarily something you can change for your circumstances or your reality. And it's crazy because as I looked into money and I started reshaping these stories and I realized all my limiting beliefs around money and I was able to really reframe them, I noticed my reality started to change, and I started to become more abundant, and I started to think of these new streams of income would come in. And I just thought it was such an interesting transformation for myself. And that's obviously what I teach in the Rise and Conquer project and what I'm so passionate about, because your money mindset, it's like anything else. And that's like such a good point, Isabel. It's like there's honestly no point on talking about income streams and how you can have six different income streams, sorry, if you're not interested in working on your money mindset, because that is like, that is the base, that is the root thing. You could come into lots of money, but if you haven't worked on your money mindset, you'll notice that money, like, you can't keep it if you have the same story running through
Yes.
your head.
Yeah.
So my first thing about money is, and I feel like we all have money stories just because of the world we live in. And I think the very first step is like really looking at what are my money stories, and
Mhm.
not being um not being harsh on yourself or being like, oh my God, I have a crap money mindset, but just being super aware and super interested. And just be like, oh, that's so interesting. I wonder where I picked up that belief. And you know what? Can I have a different belief about, this thing?
Yeah, I feel like it's really just constantly questioning why that belief is coming up. And also, as well, how you mentioned money mindset. And, obviously, what you teach in the program, and very much myself, what I'm into is more of that spiritual kind of side to money mindset. But that being said, do you very much consume resources on more like that practical front? So, I guess, like, the whole masculine versus kind of feminine approach to money mindset, money is energy, that kind of thing. But then also, look at the numbers, know your numbers as well. Like, do you kind of have a balance in terms of both of those two concepts?
To be very honest, in Naked Harvest, my business partner is my brother Cooper, and he's way more into the numbers.
Yeah.
So I feel like I definitely know the numbers, and I think it's very liberating knowing the numbers and know
Yes.
exactly, how much you're earning, and let's just call it the bottom line. But in saying that, I never get caught up in that. I never get lost in that, because I think money is, even though, you do have to be conscious and you do have to, have a complete understanding. I truly believe it's like money's just energy.
Yeah.
And I might lose a couple of people here in the conversation, but money is just energy. It's like anything else that you can sort of manifest. And when you realize that, it's so powerful. But then, yes, of course, like I'm not an idiot. I know my Shopify, and I know, how to pull reports, and we do look at how this month went compared to last month, and we have, quarterly budgets, and we have an accountant and a bookkeeper and all those things. It's very important, but I think you definitely need to be thinking of, the energy side, and
Yeah.
you're saying like the fem sort of side of it too.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And like when I've done so much money, money mindset stuff, and like I feel like you definitely haven't lost the listeners because I speak so much on the spiritual slash energy side of money. And like the biggest takeaway for me, which I'll be interested to hear, like I'm sure you've experienced some kind of similarity to this, but really it's like tapping more into your feminine energy and being in that receivership energy of like, especially when we are talking about receiving money. Have you Yeah, like what are your thoughts on that concept? Is that something that you have researched or read about or that you practice?
Yes, I think, and that's like, it's honestly something that's so difficult. I've actually been talking a lot on my podcast, the Rise and Conquer podcast, right now about fem energy, because
Yeah.
I got a reading from my psychic, and she basically was like, oh my God, Georgie, you need to step out of your masculine energy and into your fem energy. And so we have a bit of like a joke in the RNC office about stepping into our fem energy. But it's so true. Like the way I would explain fem energy is, it's the energy of a queen. She gets things brought to her. She's
Yeah.
not worried about, the next meal, or if something's going to go wrong. Like she's always got it sorted, and she knows it's just, she's always worthy, and it's just there for her, and there's no other, reality. And I think because this world is so masculine and it's such the hustle culture, and I do believe there is room for both. And like I said, my journey,
Yeah.
like a big part of my message is like, you've got to be willing to work hard and make the moves. But I think there's also that huge component of surrendering, of sitting in the, actually, intuitively, I know everything I need is going to be here for me. There's such a huge, power in that. And I think if you are in a huge, masculine hustle season of your business, very much make sure you're not getting caught up in it, and kind of have a bit of reflection and be like, how long have I been in this season? Is it time to, step more into that
Yes.
fem side and see where the flow and ease takes me?
Yeah, I love how you shared that. And, especially as females, like, I mean, it's important to have both energies regardless of your gender. But, I believe anyway, like as a female, it's essentially our birthright, I guess, to be more in our feminine energy. And I don't know about you, I'm sure you can actually resonate, but when I've been more in my masculine, like it served a purpose, yes, but as soon as I fell more into my feminine, which I chat about a lot on my podcast as well, like it's just served me so much. So I'd love to hear like from your point of view, whilst you are a business owner and you wear so many hats, it's still very much possible to be in your feminine energy, would you say?
Yes, yes, definitely. And I think, like, if I think about being in my fem energy, such a huge shift in my business has been letting go control,
Okay.
in regards to hiring more staff. Like, something that's, changed my life this year. And I know I know it's not like the most resonating point, but it's, my reality is
Yeah.
I've had a personal assistant for the first time. And really, I guess having someone to do, very miscellaneous smaller
Mm,
things, but are often quite life changing and give back time, which is like my
yeah.
biggest thing right now with having a 10, an 11-month-old baby. Has allowed me to surrender a bit more, because like I know things are taken care of. And I think that's the huge thing about like the feminine masculine. It's be like the only reason though why I'm able to really step into that fem energy is because I'm like, Georgia, you've been in your masculine energy for, the last 2 years, and you've set up the
Yeah.
business and you've worked so hard, and you are, you've built that foundation. So now it's time to step into that fem energy and like let things flow. And it's even like, um every time we made a new hire in Naked Harvest, because it did just start, me, Cooper, and Mel, like, and we were doing all the things. And every time we've had to, make a new hire, that's usually something that someone was doing. So that person has had to, almost take that step back and like
Yeah.
surrender, and being like, oh no, it gets to get taken care of, and I'm not going to micromanage. But then what happens is, that side really flourishes because a whole new person has, that
Yes.
capacity. And that's such a great, I guess, like
I love that.
metaphor of when you do surrender, when you do step into that fem energy and trust, things can go tenfold because you're not trying to control it all.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. Letting go and surrendering is like a huge thing right now, which I'm gathering, which I think is like really beautiful, and not, for myself and also for all the listeners, knowing that we don't need to do it all. And like that's exactly how we started this episode. I loved how transparent you were saying that you don't actually do it all. And I think that's just so important, for people to know that they don't need to be the complete ownership of every single thing. Like there's power in working collaboratively. So I really love that you shared that, Georgie.
Mm.
And as well, I would love to chat. So you've mentioned Cooper obviously is the partner as well in Naked Harvest, and Tim, your husband, works there as well. I'm curious to know, does working with your family, does that impact the relationships with them at all?
So Tim doesn't work in Naked Harvest anymore. Once Ivy was born, he stepped fully into like full-time dad role. But yes, he used to work in Naked Harvest in the warehouse. Look, it's definitely interesting. I think if you are going to get in business with a partner, I think the attributes you kind of need is loyalty, trust, and, that mutual respect. So, if they're family or not, those key things are so, so important. But I really do feel like in my relationship with Cooper, who is my older brother, we hold all those, and we have so much mutual respect for each other. We kind of have our own zones of genius. So in Naked Harvest, my side is like the marketing, the PR, the brand side with like how it looks and how we market and, you know, our social media channels. I call it the fun side. And
Yes.
then Cooper is, you know, logistics. He talks to the accountant.
Yes.
He liaises with how we get our product in, how we get our, you know, products filled, and that sort of side. So we very much don't step on each other's toes. And if
Yeah.
he makes a business decision in his side, on, you know, his quote unquote zone of genius,
Yeah.
I, you know, sometimes even if I don't necessarily agree, I surrender and I let go and I go, you know,
Mm,
I'm going to trust
I
that,
love
you know,
that.
he's going to make that. And look, if there's a mistake that happens, I'm going to back him and we're going to find a
Yes.
way forward. And I feel like he gives me that mutual trust and respect in what I do in the business. And I think that's why
Yeah.
it does work so well, is because we're not trying to micromanaging
Yeah.
each other. Even if we do disagree, I have that, yeah, I guess like trust and respect. And I'm like, look, it's going to be fine. We will work it out. And I think that's such a huge thing. And I think also like when you're getting on business with someone, the biggest thing is like that loyalty, like
Yeah.
that, yeah, that trust factor. And I, you know, my family, I have so much trust and love. I think that's also another big thing is like there's so much love in Naked Harvest
Wow.
because we are family. Because we do all work together. And I feel like that is then very much filtered through our team, and reflected in their values they bring to the team, also. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I really admire that. It sounds like you often hear don't get in business with family and friends, but it's exactly right. It sounds like it's a very like healthy dynamic. I think that's really inspiring to hear. And lastly, as well, I would love to wrap up by asking, Georgie, if you were to start all over again, so before Naked Harvest was born, before the podcast was a thing, before you were completely doing everything you were doing now, what would you do differently?
Oh. He's thrown a spanner in the works. He is, Isabelle. Um,
I'm curious.
I don't know. The only thing I can like, I guess, see, I'm such a person of like, I truly believe like, you know, life happens for me, everything happens
Yes,
for a reason. So I truly would not change
exactly.
anything. But I guess the thing, let's just say, you know, the advice I would give myself back then is, I would tell myself to like believe in myself, because I feel like there was just so many doubts and a lot of kind of like mindset things that I had to work through, that now I look back and I'm almost like, not that they're silly, because you obviously then have to work through them for them to, you know, feel silly. But I just would tell myself, like, back yourself, believe in yourself, like, go after your dreams, because, like, you know, why the hell not? And if, you know, and don't be scared of failure. Because I think for a while there, like my mindset really kind of ruled things, and I battled with like a lot of things that, you know, I had to work through, which is obviously totally fine. But I'd just be like, believe in yourself, girlfriend, just go for
Yeah,
it.
I love that response so much. And I totally agree. There's no regrets. Everything happens just as it should. And I think that's just such a beautiful piece you mentioned. Just as, you know, as females, especially, we get stuck in self comparison and we look at people's Instagram highlight reels and think, how on earth do they do that? But it really just to start with, I mean, firstly, it's by starting somewhere. And secondly, it's having that belief in yourself. So I really, really like how you shared that, Georgie.
No worries.
Beautiful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting you on the show, Georgie. I've just loved asking these questions. I feel like the listeners are going to get such a really interesting insight into so much more of what we see online. And I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Isabel. And it's so incredible to see how far you've come on your journey and everything, you know, you've created. I remember us chatting about your, you know, mission behind this podcast right at the start. And I really do feel like you're, you know, living out that mission. So it's really incredible to see.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It really is like a pinch me moment. I remember as well, like one of our first calls, and I was saying how I want to be a coach and have calls and a podcast and just essentially live my best life. And like 2 and a bit years later of manifesting and putting in the work and, you know, X, Y, Z, like I really am living that reality. So yeah, I feel like I'm just on cloud nine right now and I'm loving it.
It's so cool. And then it's such a testament to, like you said, like anything that you can, I guess, anything that you want and see yourself in, like you can manifest.
Yeah, totally. And when people can see that in exactly yourself, like we're both walking through in our own stories. Like I think that's the most inspiring thing for other people else to see, and like it's so incredible to be those people for other people to see. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I love it. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Isabelle. I really appreciate it.